Betsy Jolas and Philippe Manoury have been among the most important and influential French contemporary composers since the late 20th century, and their influence continues to the present day. Their works are frequently performed by leading European and American orchestras and chamber ensembles, and their teaching has influenced countless young composers around the world. The Verdehr Trio has been very fortunate to have two wonderful and effective works written by Betsy Jolas and Philippe Manoury. Philippe Manoury's work is entitled Michigan Trio and is published by Durand, and Betsy Jolas's work is entitled Trio Sopra e Sola Facta and is published by Biot. Both works have been recorded by the Verdehr Trio for Dux Records on a recording entitled Music from France, and both works have entered the repertoire and are frequently performed in Europe and in America. The following interviews with Betsy Jolas and Philippe Manoury were recorded in the spring of 2001 in the course of a tour by the Verdehr Trio in Europe. They were recorded in Paris. The Manoury interview was recorded at CENTRE IRCAM, and the Jolas interview was recorded in Madame Jolas's home in Paris. I'm speaking with Madame Betsy Jolas, a distinguished composer who's honored us with writing a work for the Verdehr Trio, and so I'm delighted to have the opportunity to be here and speak with you and ask you some things about the composition of this piece, and if you permit, something about your life also.
Would you like to answer questions?
I usually start out by asking how you approached the composition, for these particular three instruments, the violin, clarinet, and piano. Do you have specific characters assigned to each of them, or I'm just curious how?
Well, when you write for a combination that has been so brilliantly illustrated by somebody as big as Bartók, you can't forget that there is that piece which is sort of a classic. Yes. And you must start out, whether you want it or not, by getting to be familiar with that piece. Yes. And seeing what the problems are and what the combinations, how he treated the combination, and how maybe you don't want to treat them. I mean, yes. You may want to do something quite different. In my case, I started in a rather unusual way. My grandson was starting to play the recorder, and he could only play two notes. And so these two notes were G and F and G, and I was interested. I began improvising an accompaniment to his playing, yes. So that it would be more interesting. Mm. And then the idea sort of grew that I might make a piece out of that. I mean, that's not the only thing that there is in the piece. But I was amused to sort of center it around those two notes, which happened to be not a half tone, but a whole tone. A whole tone, yes. Which I used as a whole tone. And the piece really starts that way. Yes. I mean, you can tell, anybody can tell. And so I decided also at that point I was working with the Latin text, very big Latin text by Lucrece for William Christie's Les Arts Florissants. So I was into Latin, shall we say, with translating, very hard hand translating, going back to my school days, because I hadn't done anything like that. So the idea came to me to give it a title that had to do with the old tradition in music history of indicating in a kind of coded way the origin of the musical origin of the piece. And so I imagined a sort of mixed language title, as I found, for instance, in Monteverdi's sonata Sopra Sancta Maria. Well, Sancta Maria is Latin and Sopra is Italian, and I decided this trio would be called Trio Sopra et Sola Facta Est. Et Sola Facta Est means and she became alone, which is what has happened to me. And inside, hidden inside, are the syllables Sol Fa, which means G and F, which precisely the little notes that my grandson was playing. So
was that intentional, or did?
Well, it wasn't. It all grew.
It all grew
progressively. No, it didn't come. It didn't come all at once.
That's fantastic. The interval was hidden there.
So everything connected, sort of like that, and that's why this piece has this strange title, Trio Sopra et Sola Facta. So the Sol Fa is like in Josquin des Prés. You find that also with two notes, and you wonder why they're there, and then you look at the mass or whatever, or the motet, and you find that it's a central figure.
Central figure.
Yeah. So this is the enigma, which is no longer an enigma because I'm telling you.
Yes. No, it's well, it's a beautiful piece. What grew out of those two notes, you know.
Oh, that's not the only thing there is in that.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
Of course not.
There's another thing in this piece which I don't know if you took in. Because actually we are seeing each other for the first time, which is so much fun, meeting in front under the floodlights rather. That's right. And the other part in this piece is refers to the 50s or the 60s, when a lot of people were writing 12-tone music, and often, you know, the composition lesson would start by just playing the notes of the row, you know, and you usually put down a pedal so it sounded a little better. So at some point there are rows which are not rows at all, but there are 12 notes that are sort of strung together. And they end up by giving chords, and they end up being treated like rows, but they're not really strictly rows. You know? So that refers also to something that happened in my musical life.
That's very interesting.
And then everything sort of floats apart at some point.
I was sort of intrigued by the middle section where you had the violin and the clarinet
that's another
go
thing.
Off on their own.
Yeah, that's another thing. I'm very careful, especially now and late in life, to think out very, very, very strictly who does what when. You know, I think a lot of music today has everybody being busy all the time at all times, and I think it's very nice in a piece like that. Suddenly you have the two melodic instruments alone, and you are so happy to when the piano comes back in. Now the problem is getting it back in. I remember when I was writing a trio for violin, cello, and piano, Now that was somewhat the same problem, except that that combination is still more common.
Yes.
And just seeing these three on stage was going to suggest, all kinds of music,
Yes.
romantic music.
Sure.
And so I tried to destroy the expectation.
Uh-huh.
And I was very pleased when this piece was done in Alice Tolley Hall.
Yeah.
And Elliot Carter came to hear it, and he said to me, "I don't know how you do it. It doesn't sound like a trio." Well, of course, it starts. He meant like the old time trios.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I noticed you use that idea too of picking up notes from the resonance.
The resonance. Yes, that's very much in the French line.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes.
You probably have heard that
Yes.
with other French music today.
But
yes,
it works just beautifully.
Yeah. That's very much
in this way.
our kind of thinking. We like sound. Yeah.
So people say, well, we didn't know where one begins and the other leaves off,
Oh, they said that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And a marvelous connection, and then where motives come back and suddenly they develop some more.
I'm very interested to hear what you say, because I wonder sometimes how my music is felt in America, because they're writing very different music these days.
Yes.
Yeah. And usually there is a little surprise, but then it usually works.
Oh, well, we had very positive response, and people had some very strong, excited reactions to it, to the wonderful sounds.
I'm dying to hear it live.
Now, may I ask you a little bit about your own background? I know you're a pianist and
I'm not a pianist.
organist.
I play the piano. I played the organ. I haven't played for a long time. I love to play the piano.
In your biography, it says you were a singer also.
I sang in the desert choirs in New York for 6 years. I am extremely interested in the voice in general. I mean, this is the voice is part of my writing, even when it's not for voice. I mean, it sort of has moved to the instruments in many ways. And I have written vocal pieces throughout my life. I have just finished a big piece for the Baroque ensemble des Arts Florissants, which was quite an experience, with the pitch 392. Can you imagine?
Wow.
A 392.
392. My goodness.
Yeah. That was amazing, but it was beautiful sound. It was wonderful learning about new instruments, and I've always wanted to, I've always liked to find out about new things, and I like challenges. I like to give myself things to do that I haven't done before. Even though I'm not young, I like to do that. I like to do that. So the background, if you've read my biography, is it couldn't be more favorable. My father was a poet, and he was the founder of. He was also a very good newspaperman. I mean, he liked to have both activities. But my mother came from Louisville, Kentucky. So you see, it's quite a mixture. And she was going to be a singer, so she was sent to Berlin to study in 1913. I still have a Schubert album. It says Berlin, 1913. And she met my father in Paris, of all things. And they got married. They went back to America, and I could have been born there. And then something displeased my father in America, and my mother was already pregnant, and they said no. He said, "We're leaving. We're going to Paris." That's how I was born here. Yeah.
And I understand he knew all the greats. All the greats.
Yeah, he did. And I was just a little girl, but James Joyce was a friend of the family. He was a very good friend, and scared me a bit.
So can I just ask you as an aside, what kind of personality?
Well, he was warm and a little scary, because he was very, very tall and thin and blind, practically blind. He was always going around with a cane. And he didn't talk to children very much, but you felt he was warm and attentive, And I have distinct memories of 2 or 3 things that happened when I was about 13 or 12. So, I mean, one of which was the guessing of the title of Finnegan's Wake, because Finnegan's Wake was published under the title which all musicians have picked up now, called Work in Progress. I mean, whenever you can't finish a piece, you say it's a work in progress.
Work in progress.
Yeah. So that's Finnegan's Wake. And Joyce had put a bet on whoever guessed the title. And so my mother and father one night guessed the title. And the next day, Joyce arrived. I was playing in the garden with my sister, and he gave us all these rolls of money wrapped up in a little paper. He said, "You give this to your father for his lunch, his hors d'oeuvre,
Yes.
And so we did. That was the price of the bet. Yeah. And so he tells this story. If you have a chance in your library at home, this book should be available. It's published by Yale University Press. It's called Man from Babel. That's my father.
Man from Babel.
Yeah, you might be interested in reading that, because it's very interesting.
And
stuff.
It just came out.
It came out a year ago. It came out a year ago. I have a book out too, but in French. Called Molto Spasibo.
Molto Spasibo. Well, I could try to read it. I'd love to.
Yes.
I'd love to get it. Where is it?
It's published at L'Harmattan. It's published in France. It's not translated yet. No. Philippe also has a book out.
Oh, does he? He didn't mention it.
Yeah, in the same publishing house.
I see.
We both have books out. Yeah.
I must write it down before I leave, so I don't forget.
Okay, I'll write it down for you.
Yeah.
And the other 1940, after the armistice, We were waiting. My mother had a school, and Joyce had joined us because his grandson was in our school, and Joyce and his wife had joined us. And we were in a hotel in a little village in the center of France, and waiting for the parents to come and get their children from all over France, because after the armistice, everybody was sort of everywhere. And then we had decided to go back to America because my father was here when it was in America, and Joyce wouldn't go to America. He went to Switzerland. But here we were, in this hotel, and every night after dinner, Joyce and my mother would correct proof for a new edition of Finnegans Wake in the front hall of this small hotel.
Yes.
And after that, we would make music. There was a little room next to the sort of restaurant,
Yes.
with an upright piano, and they would sing duets, and I would accompany.
My goodness.
So that's something I can't forget.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Among the composers that you work with or that lived during your youth, to whom did you look up?
I have always looked up to the whole history of music. It goes back. I have a sort of chain of my own chain.
Yes.
That goes back to the 12th century.
Yeah.
And throughout this, I don't take everybody there. I just take a few here and there, you see. Yes. Now, after that, well, people of my generation, many people I admire greatly. I'm interested, but not in everything they write. I'm interested in people like Steve Reich.
Yes.
Some John Adams I like.
Mm-hmm.
Some Cage I'm interested, but not really. I wouldn't like to sit down and have to listen to Cage all day.
Yeah.
It's not my pleasure, shall we say. My pleasure is really Josquin-des-Prés, to be very frank.
Yeah.
A recent discovery is Shostakovich. I am really a fan now.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that Shostakovich somehow is emerging. I mean, it's silly to say emerging because he was very popular during his lifetime, but somehow I think people take his music more seriously and consider him a major composer.
I became extremely interested in some of the later pieces, especially the quartets.
Yes.
Which, once again, this happens all the time. It was one of my students who showed me some of the quartets, and same thing happened with Sibelius. I had been violently against Sibelius, and one of my students decided that he was going to work on Seventh Symphony, and I said, "Oh, what an extraordinary piece!" And so I'm still changing my tastes, and I wanted to hear an opera by Enesco. You see, I've been exploring all that. Szymanowski, I heard King Roger. An extraordinary opera also. Yeah. Do you know the violin and piano pieces of Szymanowski?
Yes, they're wonderful.
They're wonderful.
Beautiful pieces,
Absolutely wonderful.
No, that's masterful.
So all of these people I'm discovering late.
I am always interested in what composers think about where music is going and what's happening in the present. And do you care to speculate about the future?
No, I don't really care to speculate. I'm not sure I can.
Okay.
At this point, there doesn't seem to be anything like what there was in the 60s as kind of unity.
Yes.
It's very, very varied, and in fact, I am very much against tagging the different schools of thought. Mm-hmm. As they do in this country. I don't know if they do in America, but it's very fashionable to be this, all that. You can't be both, And as I say, I've always found my sources throughout the history of music, and not only the history of music, but I'm interested in rap. I'm interested in funk, and world music, whatever the tag is. I'm interested in all that. I don't take it all. I take what I'm interested in. Yeah?
Of course.
So I think that's part of the not the problem, but the situation today. The wide variety of possibilities that are open through internet, through all this, which is opening the world now we'll have to choose because I think any ghetto is something I cannot stand. I mean, I don't really like contemporary music concerts. The way people sort of gather around a so-called modern music, which is not this and which is not this and which is not this, and I don't think it's satisfactory, and I was very interested in this experiment I told you about, writing for the Art Florissant, which is a Baroque group. And the concert in which my piece was played, which is a big piece for 45 minutes, for chorus, soloists, and orchestra, on the Latin text. And I was in the same program with Marc-Antoine Charpentier and Mondonville. And Christy has an enormous following, so that the hall was absolutely packed.
Yes.
Packed.
Oh,
I mean, my friends couldn't get seats to come in.
Yeah.
And well, his group had never played contemporary music, never.
Yeah.
I mean, he just said, he gave me no rule as to what I was supposed to write, what duration, what combination. I was totally free, and to me it was very interesting to see how people were going to receive my piece played by this Baroque ensemble, from which they expected sounds like Charpentier.
Yes, sure.
And it was very well received.
You taught at the Paris Conservatoire.
Yeah.
How do you help people find themselves,
That's exactly the problem.
Yes.
I mean, those who come to me and say, what style shall I write in?
Maybe it's useless.
Anyway, that doesn't make much sense. No, I say, first of all, I say to them, are you sure you want to write? Well, by the time I have them as students, they've gone through an enormous barrage. It's very, very difficult to enter. I just went through. I was on the jury for the exam. It's 2 weeks of exams.
Really?
It's very, very
to
difficult.
enter as a composition major.
Pardon me?
To enter as a composition major.
Yeah. Very, very difficult.
Yes. Okay.
And so, it's a free school, the Conservatoire. It's free.
Yes, I know.
And so there are very few vacancies.
Yes.
So what I do generally, the first time I tell them, bring everything you've written.
Yes.
And I usually spend 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours with them, looking at everything they wrote and trying to find out who they are, what they're trying to do, and whether they really want to do it.
Yeah.
Because some people think they're composers and they're not at all. I've had this experience of convincing young people that they're not composers.
That they're not composers.
No.
And what I mean, again, it sounds like a naive question, but what is kind of a benchmark?
There's no benchmark. It's the will to compose, and not the will, the necessity to compose. I always tell a story which was a revelation to me. I remember when I was studying with Darius Milhaud, he was my teacher, and the courses took place at his home. And I arrived one morning, and I was on time, but everybody was late.
Yes.
Which happens. And so he was working. And I didn't dare enter. And finally, after about 10 minutes at the door, his wife said, "You go in." And I entered and I apologized. "I'm sorry to disturb you." He says, No, it's quite all right. You give me an excuse to stop. He really said that. And I said to myself, that's a composer, man who just cannot stop. And we composers, we real composers cannot stop. I mean, even when we're not writing, we're occupied. Our mind is occupied. Yes. And I can see that with young people. I mean, if it's really a passion, if it's really a necessity, or if it's just something they do in school because they have to do it. Or because it's part of a general culture. That's all right. Pourquoi pas? But it's not going to be a composer. So, I guess that answers the question.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Betsy. It's been a delight to speak with you and to be in your beautiful home. And I must say again that we're very proud to have your piece. It's a lovely piece, and the audiences have enjoyed it very much, and we will make every effort to record it this year.
Thank you for playing it, and I hope very much to hear it live very soon.
Well, we must make that happen.
Yes.
So, thank you.